To understand U.S. power in the Middle East, you have to follow one thing above all: oil. For more than a century, the Middle East has held some of the world's most strategic crude oil reserves. American influence grew first through oil concessions, technology, and partnerships, not by ruling the region directly. A key moment came in 1945, when President Roosevelt met Saudi King Abdulaziz aboard the USS Quincy. The logic was simple: security for the kingdom, stable access to oil for the United States. Even U.S. government records from the 1940s openly linked Saudi stability to American oil interests. After World War II, oil became the fuel of modern life: cars, planes, factories, armies, and global trade. That made the Middle East more than a region. It became a strategic engine of the global economy. For decades, Western oil companies dominated production, pricing, and export systems across much of the region. In 1960, that began to change. Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela formed OPEC. OPEC was created so producing countries could gain more control over their own oil and pricing power. This was a turning point. Control of oil was shifting from foreign companies towards sovereign states. Then came the 1973 oil shock, when Arab producers imposed an embargo and oil became a geopolitical weapon. Americans suddenly felt what energy dependence meant: shortages, inflation, and vulnerability. The lesson in Washington was clear: secure energy routes or risk economic chaos. At nearly the same time, another crisis was unfolding. The dollar had just been cut loose from gold. In 1971, Nixon ended dollar convertibility into gold, bringing the Bretton Woods system to an end. The U.S. now needed a new anchor for dollar demand, and oil helped provide it. In the 1970s, U.S. Saudi cooperation deepened around security, arms, investment, and oil trade. That's the heart of the petrodollar system. Oil exporters earn dollars, then recycle many of those dollars into the global financial system. It did not mean America owned all the oil. It meant the world increasingly needed dollars to buy and finance it. From there, U.S. strategy focused on protecting the Gulf and the sea lanes that move oil to the world. In 1980, the Carter Doctrine declared that outside control of the Persian Gulf would be treated as an attack on vital U.S. interests. That doctrine helped justify decades of American military presence tied to Gulf security and energy stability. But oil trading itself was also changing. Prices were no longer set only by long political bargains. In 1983, WTI crude futures launched in New York, helping turn oil into a deeply financialized global commodity. Brent then rose as the benchmark for seaborne oil, especially for cargoes traded across international waters. Over time, benchmark systems like WTI, Brent, and Dubai became the language of crude pricing. That changed everything. Oil was no longer just pumped and shipped. It was hedged, speculated on, and priced second by second. The dollar stayed dominant because the system around oil trade was built in dollars: banks, insurance, debt markets, and settlements. And beyond oil itself, the dollar remained the main reserve currency held by central banks around the world. That is why every Gulf crisis echoes through inflation, shipping costs, stock markets, and diplomacy far beyond the region. In conflicts from the Gulf War onward, energy security and regional order remained tightly connected. As Asia's demand surged, Middle East oil became even more central, but now in a more multipolar global economy. Then U.S. shale changed the game. America became a much bigger producer, reducing some of its old dependence on imports. But even with shale, the United States still cared deeply about Gulf oil, because allies and global prices still depended on it. The market also proved it could break in spectacular ways. In 2020, U.S. crude futures briefly turned negative. That moment showed how oil had become not only a physical resource, but a complex financial machine. So why is oil still mostly traded in dollars today? Because the dollar system is liquid, trusted, scalable, and deeply entrenched. Exporters want a currency they can invest easily, borrow against, hedge with, and move through global markets at scale. That does not mean alternatives do not exist. Some deals happen in other currencies, but the dollar still dominates the ecosystem. In the end, U.S. influence over Middle East oil was built through a fusion of diplomacy, military. The story is not just about who pumps the oil, it is about who protects the routes, prices the barrels, and runs the money. And for decades, that is where U.S. power and Middle East oil became part of the same global system.